Okay, we're back. And this is actually our last presentation of the afternoon before we go into this evening's outreach event, which is called Terry Pratchett at the Unseen University. So we're very honored that Maria Castrillo has joined us this final presentation, and I'll just read your bio, Maria. So she's head of special collections and engagement at Senate House Library, University of London, which is also one of the main UK repositories for Terry Pratchett material. Her research interests lie in the area of archival science, collecting, as well as in how special collections can be used to enhance greater diversity and participation in research libraries through public engagement programs. She has researched and published work on adaptation of Terry Pratchett's novels to computer games and what this means for digital preservation of complex digital objects. For example, missing, presumed, computer games and digital adventures in Colin Smythe / Terry Pratchett's collections. And today, she's going to be talking to us exactly about collecting and archiving Terry Pratchett, challenges, opportunities, and unknowns. I'll just share your presentation with everyone, Maria, and then off you go. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, James. Thanks very much for the introduction, and thanks everybody for staying with me. I'm aware that I am the last presenter today, and everybody must be really tired after 2 very intensive days of fantastic presentations. So thank you very much for staying with me. My presentation, as James was saying, is going to be primarily around how the Terry Pratchett literary legacy has been preserved and archived. One of the things that is quite interesting to note is that contemporary collections are challenging traditional methods of collecting in archives and libraries, and also the ways in which we engage with audiences. Partly a consequence of emerging new formats and media, and partly a result of how academic research has evolved towards more interdisciplinary methodologies, the truth is that traditional paper-based and analogs coexist with less structure and more dynamic ones, such as born digital objects, websites, and social media. When considering this in the context of the conference and the future shaping of the Terry Pratchett studies, researchers will come across a hybrid body of material which will pose in itself significant challenges in terms of access, scope, and volume, as well as a myriad of opportunities to approach research from different angles and collaboratively. In this paper, I will consider how Terry Pratchett's literary legacy has been collected and archived. As far as it is possible to establish, most of what survives today and is available to researchers has been collected and archived chiefly through the lens of others, usually people who were close to him and worked with him over the years, rather than through Pratchett's conscious effort to do so. From his own literary agent and publisher's vast collecting and archiving efforts, to people who met him and corresponded with him, as well as those who followed him and his work, and who have developed virtual communities of theirs via the World Wide Web, where they continue to discuss his work and legacy and generate additional content which will be invaluable to present and future generations of researchers. In this regard, it would be relevant to the theme of the conference to explore the nature of the primary resources available and to what extent they are a reliable and authentic record of Pratchett as an author and of his work. This will reveal the myriad of possibilities these sources offer, as they remain largely unexplored by researchers from a wide range of disciplines. But before I continue with my presentation, I want to thank Colin Smythe, who very generously shared his insights into his collecting with me, and of course for his generosity over the years as a major donor to Senate House Library. In the UK, the vast majority of primary and secondary sources relating to Terry Pratchett are held in publicly funded research libraries within the higher education sector. Senate House Library at the University of London and Liverpool University Library are the two main repositories for Pratchett material in the UK. Outside of the UK, the other major institution to hold Pratchett-related material is the library at Trinity College in Dublin. Over 6,800 items directly related to Pratchett's literary production are held in these institutions alone. This figure relates primarily to material which is discoverable via online public access catalogues and electronic finding aids, but it does not include material which is still uncatalogued or for which only internal finding aids exist. As far as it is possible to establish these are the only institutions in the world to hold comprehensive Pratchett-related material. It is very possible, as indicated yesterday by Rob Wilkins, that the family and his own estate still have other primary source material, similar to what is held in research libraries. What is certain is that Terry Pratchett entrusted his assistant and long-term friend Rob Wilkins with destroying the computer hard drive where he kept his unfinished novels in late August 2017. The event was widely reported and documented in the UK and international press, and offers an interesting angle of Pratchett as a subject author who took an existential decision over the preservation of his unfinished literary legacy after his death. There are common characteristics to the three collections. The three were assembled by Colin Smythe, Terry Pratchett's literary agent, and were gifted to these three major research institutions in the early years of the 21st century. Smythe has been a private and prolific collector since approximately the mid-1960s, with a very keen interest in literary collections, which he has donated to various institutions in the UK and Ireland over the years. Collectors such as him are a gift to libraries and archives all over the world, because they have a good and deep knowledge of the collecting interests and strengths of the institutions where they intend to deposit or donate material, and how it can complement those established strengths. In the case of Terry Pratchett, Colin Smythe was also his first literary agent and worked very closely with him for a very long time, which adds to his deep knowledge of the material he has been collecting and the criteria for collecting it. It was a resounding success following the publication of The Colour of Magic, which spearheaded Colin Smythe's collecting efforts regarding Terry Pratchett. In the case of Senate House Library, for example, there was already an existing relationship with the librarian and Colin Smythe at the time, further cemented by the donation of the papers of psychic author Matthew Manning in 2004. Furthermore, the library is home to rich literary and publishers' archives, including extensive special collections and manuscripts relating to William Shakespeare, one of Pratchett's influences, and also to magic and the mind, which is also very present in many of his novels. This established collecting strengths certainly made Senate House Library an ideal home for the material. The donation of the first batch had Terry Pratchett's approval, as evidenced by his signature in the deed of gift, where he acted as a witness to the donation. These three collections are all held and managed within a special collections department because of the provenance, their comprehensiveness, and their uniqueness, and the subject matter, of course. This is important as much of the content is contemporary and recent, and therefore presents specific needs in terms of cataloging, intellectual property rights, long-term storage and preservation, particularly audiovisual and new media, as well as digital objects such as computer games and electronic books. There are many overlaps in coverage across the three collections, but they all appear to have been gifted with a purpose beyond the purely custodial function of a library or archive. In the case of Senate House Library, which is the one I know best, obviously, there were originally plans to work collaboratively with the British Library on potentially hosting touring exhibitions, as well as to set up a permanent exhibition space within the library for the Pratchett collection. Although this did not happen in the way it was originally envisaged, certainly since 2016, the library has made significant efforts to raise the profile of the Terry Pratchett archive, particularly in the context of public engagement. As well as collaborating in the initiative launched by the Pratchett project team at Trinity College, Senate House Library is also developing a program of public engagement events to further raise the profile of this wonderful collection. This year, for example, as part of the Being Human Festival, which is the UK Festival of the Humanities, and whose overarching theme is New Worlds, we are running two related events. One of them is an In Conversation event with Neil Gaiman, Rhianna Pratchett, and Rob Wilkins. And the other one will be a crowdsourcing workshop where we will be asking the public to contribute more descriptions and challenge our catalogue records. In 2021, and COVID-19 permitting, obviously, we're planning to host an exhibition exploring Terry Pratchett. And the library also hosts a visiting research fellowship every year in the summer, which, although is not strictly linked to Terry Pratchett or the collection, is open to anybody who wants to apply and can research on the collection. Having explored the origins and some of the similarities between these three major collections, I'd like now to focus on the material held at Senate House Library and how it documents and illustrates Pratchett's work and the world he created. This collection can be described as a model example of a contemporary archive, where the boundaries between different media and formats are blurred. The contents can be roughly categorized in the categories you can see in the screen, including obviously printed books, which are primarily all of Pratchett's novels, and other works by him published in the English language and also in other languages. Of particular note is the hand-colored copy of The Carpet People, first editions of all of his works and works inscribed by Terry Pratchett. We also hold books or relating to Pratchett or of interest to understand his work and the world he invented. There is also archival material in the collection, particularly printouts of draft typescripts of Pratchett's novels, some of them containing manuscript notes, typescripts of some of the computer games based on the Discworld novels, screenplay scripts, theatre and stage adaptations, printout proofs of various works, typescript drafts of his speech in Dublin 2010, and other related papers. The collection also includes much publicity and marketing material, including lots of advertising material relating to public appearances and other engagements throughout his life, sound and video recordings, artwork, news cuttings and reviews, which offer extensive coverage in the media and press of many of his engagements and the reception of his work. And it also includes, for example, a lot of news cuttings, lots of journals relating to specific audiences, such as computer games enthusiasts, science fiction fans, and so on. Another important aspect of the collection is the artifacts, and for example, there are lots of models and bottles of beer and wine and very early computer games that you can see in the screen, much ephemera as well. For example, here you can see some badges, cutout figures, and a model as well. And finally, the collection also contains born digital objects, including computer games, which provided adaptations of some of his novels, including versions for other markets outside of the UK. There are currently 3,000 items fully catalogued and discoverable via the library's online public access catalogue, and archival items also through the library's catalogue for archives and manuscripts. All of these items were obviously the first ones gifted to the library by Colin Smythe in 2003. But over the years, the collection has continued to grow through the generosity of the donor, who made further deposits in 2010, 2013, and 2016, and who is still actively collecting Pratchett-related material. The later deposits amount to approximately 1,000 items, probably more. And although there is some catalogue, we are very fortunate that Colin Smythe provided lists of this content, so we have a very good idea of what new riches the collection has to offer. The research value of the collection, as you can imagine, is enormous. In the following slide, I'm just sketching very roughly some of the perspectives that you can gain through this material. Obviously, Pratchett as a contemporary author, his literary work, his key literary and English folklore influences, his place in English literature. Also, the transmission and interpretation of his work, particularly in the context of translations into at least 36 different languages, which turned him into a global phenomenon and a best-selling author. Another important aspect that appears in the collection is the collaborative nature of a lot of his work, particularly with regards to his inner circle of friends and collaborators, and the working relationship he developed with illustrators and artists who designed and created the book covers. Book and publishing history, particularly the editorial process, illustrations and artwork linked to the literary works and conceived as one, as well as the marketing emotional activities in which he was involved, and his own status, as I said before, as a major literary figure and a global celebrity. The reception of his work, as shown in reviews and newspaper cuttings from a wide range of media outlets and periodical publications, and also the relationship with the media, as evidenced by recordings of interviews in radio and television, as well as participation in TV programs. Another important theme is the adaptation of his work to various genres, including the radio, television, stage, film, and computer games, and the intersections between these and literature. And obviously, the three-dimensional representation of his literary universe as reflected in the merchandise and the characters that were created as a result. These are important objects as well because they are part of material and popular culture in the 20th and 20th century. The collection also contains, provides insights into his campaigning work, particularly around the Orangutan Foundation and also assisted dying. And finally, a theme that has been recurrent through the conference, and which is basically technology and its role in Pratchett's work, particularly digital technology and computers. This is particularly present through the collection of TypeScript drafts of his work and the abundance of material in electronic formats. Other material held at Senate House, beyond the Colin Smythe Terry Pratchett archive, includes a small capsule collection of correspondence between Terry Pratchett and Henny Meyer, covering the period from around 1994 to 2007. These letters provide that often delightful and immediate image of an author in conversation with himself, but also with fellow authors. The correspondence covers a wide range of topics, including religion, religious belief, Judaism and the meanings of Yiddish words, Pratchett characters, evolution, the research for the science of this world, and also J.K. Rowling, of course. Finally, I don't think a picture of Terry Pratchett or a full picture of Terry Pratchett can be painted without exploring the digital realm. Pratchett had a keen interest in technology, as evidenced in the subject of many of his novels, where machines and inventions take a magical turn and serve an imaginative as much as a practical purpose. In his daily working life, he also made extensive use of technology, particularly computers. What is more, Pratchett had an interest in computer games as a player, but also as an extension of his literary work, having overseen the adaptation of some of his Discworld novels to this medium. His seminal influence in the field of computer and video games in the 1990s is well documented in various specialized and industry publications. In addition to this angle, one of the most interesting aspects for the future development of Pratchett studies will be analyzing and exploring his digital footprint, particularly in the World Wide Web. The UK Web Archive, which harvests and collects millions of UK domain websites through a consortium of the 6 legal deposit libraries in the UK and the Republic of Ireland, is an invaluable source in this regard. A basic search using the word Pratchett yields hundreds of thousands results, including a wide range of websites directly relating to Pratchett or containing relevant information about him and his literary work, reviews of his books, news about him, or the publication of his novels, as well as other aspects of his life. In addition, fan forums and social media are another area that deserves to be widely explored, as these are platforms for discussion and exchange of ideas, which function like virtual digital archives with a dynamic structure. We might not be able to preserve and curate all of this heritage for posterity. However, it will be important to capture and particularly engage with these voices, with these stories and experiences in future research through collaboration and participatory strategies that empower and enable fans and non-fans to contribute knowledge and expertise about Pratchett, his work, and his universe. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Maria. It was wonderful to hear from you. And I can't start the questions before I give you the chance to say when the Being Human Festival is.
The Human Festival. Well, if you go to the, I think it's in the last slide. Well, it's going to be from the 12th to the 22nd of November. And the two events we are organizing are on the 17th of November at 6:00 p.m. That's the conversation event. And on the 19th of November, we are running a workshop in collaboration with colleagues in the Institute of English Studies. And that's basically going to be a crowdsourcing workshop where we're going to use Scholar, just basically, to ask the public to, add more content, share their stories, and provide more, more additional content to our catalog. Just basically want people to challenge the catalog.
That's great. It's a bit like last year we did a hackathon here in Trinity. So it's really nice to be getting people involved and actually making the data.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one because obviously we're going to have to run these events online. The current circumstances don't allow for face-to-face events, unfortunately. But I think I think there are many opportunities, as this conference has shown, that you can engage with so many people across the world. That it's really, yeah. I think there are opportunities, definitely. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, so Monica has asked, I think I know the answer to this question already, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Which is the most peculiar piece you found archived about Terry Pratchett? Is it beer and video game? Oh, sorry, she says beer and video games were quite surprising.
The video games, I mean, I began, to get interested in the collection shortly after I arrived in 2016 because we did an exhibition on utopias. And I remember the very first presentation of the conference was about Terry Pratchett and utopia. So we had, as part of the exhibition, an event on computer games. So we played some of the vintage computer games, and that's how I discovered that we had computer games in the Terry Pratchett archive, and that's how I began to get interested. So that's, for me, that's my first approach to Terry Pratchett. Probably in terms of, I think perhaps, I don't know. I think just the scripts of some of the novels that we have in the archives. I mean, I know they're probably not the most visually interesting ones, but they're certainly fascinating. And just seeing the sheer amount, I think it would be really difficult to choose. Just seeing the sheer amount of material we have and the complexity of the collection as well.
Yeah, it's always a bit scary when Colin describes the volume of the collection, because he never says like there are so many thousand items. He tells me the amount in cubic meters, and it just blows my mind when I think like things don't normally fit into neat cubes, so they're probably taking up a whole lot more space than that in reality.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the nature of contemporary material, that you get basically very comprehensive collecting, and I think that's good because it gives you a much fuller picture of the subject. So yeah.
Excellent. And Naomi asks, does the archive currently contain much or any fan-created artifacts? And is there currently any strategy for collecting web-based fan activity, or is that a topic for future work?
Sorry, could you repeat the question again? I don't think I caught everything, because it's two questions in one.
Yeah, so she's asking about, firstly, she's asking about fan-created artifacts, so things which were made by fans. And then the second thing is she's asking about whether you collect internet activity about Terry Pratchett or not.
Yeah, in terms of fan-created material, we have a few things which, Colin has collected, but obviously, I mean, he's been very comprehensive in his collecting, so we have a few things in the collection. In terms of web archives, we don't have the technology to collect websites yet, but certainly we are moving towards collecting born digital material. We already have a few born digital archives in the library. And it's something that, I mean, collecting, for example, things like social media, as you probably know, or your colleagues in the library know, is quite complicated. There is very, very little social media in the UK Web Archive because it's a very dynamic, ever-changing, and it's not just that, it's also, all the legal implications around, what you can do with it. So we wouldn't be collecting that, but certainly we would be looking at using social media to engage communities and to generate other content.
That's great. And Christoph from our library here said, do you know, Maria, that there is a permanent collection in Salisbury Museum? They had an exhibition in 2018. I didn't know that.
I know they had an exhibition in 2018, and basically, I think they they loaned the Carpet People, our edition of the Carpet People, and a few other things. That was just when I arrived. I think that exhibition was being curated as I arrived in the library, and I remember some of my colleagues were dealing with external loans. I know that there were plans. I think Colin might be better placed than me to answer that question, but I think there were plans to create a Terry Pratchett museum in Salisbury, but I don't know, what the position is at the moment.
Okay.
And I don't know if they have material themselves.
Okay. There's some discussion actually in the chat about whether it's a permanent collection or not. Some people are adamant that it's not. So, Michaela says, we saw earlier how fans use tattooing as a method of engaging with work. Many Pratchett fans also, or instead, make various objects. Are you looking at all fan-produced ephemera?
Probably, depending on what it is, because we are a library, and I mean many of our collections, like the Colin Smythe Terry Pratchett collection, contains three-dimensional objects, and that's not unusual in libraries. So another similar example would be the Harry Price of Magical Literature, which contains both printed, archival, and 3D objects as well. But we would only be collecting that sort of material if it could be placed in the context of what we already have. For us to collect three-dimensional material, like, as I said, objects, we would have to make that case very clearly, because most of what we collect is basically printed material, archives, manuscripts, things like that. So we would need to look carefully about what is its place in the archive. But certainly, I mean, in terms of public engagement, it's something that we would be looking at. For example, if a way to involve people with exhibition creation or creating content for exhibition is just asking them to create something, a piece, for an exhibition. So that's one of the things that we might explore next year, as I said, depending on whether we're able to do the exhibition in the current situation. But regardless of that, whenever we do that exhibition, we would be definitely looking at engaging people and promoting, as I said before, participatory strategies. I think that's essential, and particularly with Pratchett, definitely.
Absolutely. exciting times coming. I keep saying to people that the Pratchett project just keeps growing every year, and it's great. We need more PhD candidates, more postdocs, and more people who are going to actually do research on this stuff. So Matt is one of the people who is doing research on this stuff, and he said he's interested in engaging with the material as data. Are there any moves to transcribe or otherwise make available the materials for people like me? I know the answer to that, but I'll let you answer it.
Well, what do you mean by transcribing? Because, we don't have manuscripts as such. What we have, I mean, for example, the archival material is mainly typescripts. There are, some of them are annotated, but, that in itself makes it quite interesting, I think. Because, you tend to think about literary archives in terms of proper manuscripts, and that wasn't really Pratchett example. So, I mean, it depends on what he's interested in. But if he wants a chat, we can definitely talk about that and see what is possible. And as I said, I mean, we have a visiting research fellowship advertised every year at the end of November, early December. So if anybody wants to keep an eye on that and have a look at our website coming November, December, there will be, as I said, an advertisement there. And then, definitely, if anybody wants to put up a proposal for Pratchett, we would be very happy to consider it. Definitely.
Excellent. And when it comes to digitizing the collection, this is something. So the three collections that exist. So as Maria said, Senate House, Trinity College Dublin, and Liverpool are three of the comprehensive collections, and we are working together to try and scan as much of this collection as we can. But obviously, you can appreciate that 6,000 plus items takes quite a long time and needs a really clever strategy to think out how we're going to get through all that stuff, not only in terms of time, but in order we have to pay someone to do this. So it's a logistical headache, which we've been working through for a couple of years, but we are planning to get some kind of archive ready for everyone.
I agree. I think, it's obviously not the logistical complications, but also the copyright, the intellectual property rights. And, there will be his own rights, but there will be, the people's as well, potentially. So that, that could be quite challenging. But I think, the new world in which we're living, I think is kind of asking for a more open approach to digitization, because people are not going to be able to engage with physical collections for a long time. So I think we might see in the next few years a relaxation of copyright legislation, to basically foster research, because otherwise people are not going to be able to see libraries and and see the collection. So I think that could be quite an interesting question.
I agree. We the other approach that we were taking just before the pandemic hit is that we were planning to build. We still are planning to build an infrastructure, a research infrastructure, which would contain all the material and which you could interrogate, but you wouldn't be able to take a whole book out, or you wouldn't be able to read whole sections of a book. So if you wanted to find out all the instances of the word witch, for example, you'd be able to find that throughout the whole collection, but you wouldn't be able to sit and read equal rights, because that's what we have libraries for. So that's still our plan, actually. It's just a matter of time and money.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, I mean, my feeling is that I think, digitization, obviously it's been with us for a long time, particularly, in libraries, archives, museums. But I think, it's going to get, the efforts to digitize more material and to create open content and open access material are going to be, intensified for all kinds of reasons. So in a way, it might be good. There might be good things about it. I think, authors and owners of copyright might feel less, comfortable about that. But I think it could develop very interesting conversations between the people who deposit materials in libraries and archives and ourselves as the custodians of that material, and yourselves, the researchers, the public wanting to access it, as the people who use it and reuse it. So, I think more collaboration will be required in the next, in the next few years, definitely.
Excellent. And actually, we have a wonderful ally in Colin Smythe, because he still controls a lot of the negotiations when it comes to publishers. And he's actually told that he would be happy for us to use the collection for research. So it's looking good. Obviously, we can't ignore copyright, and it wouldn't be in anyone's interest to ignore copyright, but it's looking good for the future of Pratchett research.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm not seeing more questions for you, Maria, and I could talk to you all day, but I don't feel like it would be fair. So I'll stop now, and I'll say thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you. Okay, and that brings us to the close of the conference. Can you believe it? That's already been 2 days. We come to an end just now, and those of you who are going to join us at this evening's event will only have about an hour to wait before the next thing starts. Those of you who haven't yet got your ticket, please do book now, because I've just put the link there in the chat box. We're going to have a break for about an hour, and then we'll be back up at 6 o'clock Irish time. And this is going to be an outreach event, so it's part of the Culture Night Festival. So a lot of the presentations, well, there are only 4 presentations, but 2 of them are going to focus on the issue of brain health, which is something that it's a direction that the project has moved in especially strongly over the past few months. So we'll be sharing some of the developments in that field with you, and also having some conversations about how that research is developing. So I hope to see you over there in an hour's time. And if I don't, then thanks so much for joining us for the day and for yesterday as well. It's been an amazing experience, and I hope to see you again before very long. Thanks so much.